request the brothers in the back to come much closer towards the front, please. Come all the way towards the front. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Space in. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The third with your loudest voices in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The subject of martyrdom is a fundamental subject in Islamic thought, and a subject which requires an in-depth examination, for it is a subject from which many lessons may be learnt and many examples may be derived. The word martyrdom is a word which has positive and negative connotations, and is a word which is often mentioned in the world media. Many throughout history have been labelled as martyrs. Personalities such as Socrates or Guevara, Luther King or X, have all been seen by their respective communities as being martyrs in their own right. At the same time, we find that the labeling of a martyr is relative to each community, depending on their standpoint as to what determines a martyr. Recently, the girl who died in the Iranian protests by the name of Neda was termed a martyr by some. Likewise, Marwa Sharbini, the Egyptian lady who died in the German courtroom, was termed a martyr by others. And therefore we find that the position of the martyr is a revered position within society as a whole, and especially a revered position within the Abrahamic faith, that when you look within the theology of Judaism, or indeed Christianity, or in the religion of Islam, you'll find that each of them has their own stories or their own tales depicting the position of the martyr. As an example, within Jewish history, the famous story of Eliezer in the book of the Maccabees depicts the stand of a martyr as a witness to the truth, in the idea that Eliezer was forced to eat pork. And he stood up against those who were forcing him to eat pork by stating that this is against my religion and I will not allow it to touch me. And even if it means that you take my life, take my life. In Jewish thought, this is seen as the stand of a martyr, that a person loses their life standing for the truth. Likewise, we find within Christian theology that the very heart of Christianity is a religion which is made up of an understanding of the martyrdom of the main personality within the religion, that the martyrdom of Jesus Christ in Christian thought is the very basis of the whole movement of the religion. And it's the martyrdom of Jesus Christ which led to others dying in the same way that he did. One only has to look at Stephen the sage and his stand against oppression, or look, for example, at Polycarp and his rise against the Romans. When the Romans were about to put him to death, they told him, "Denounce Jesus and come towards us." He replied by saying, 86 years I've been on the path of Christ. You think now you're going to make me leave him? All of these stands within the Abrahamic faith highlight the importance of the act of martyrdom. And likewise within every sect in the religion of Islam, there is a focus on the value and the position of the martyr. You find some people who find Uthman ibn Affan as being a martyr in Medina when he died. You find others who see Hussein ibn Ali as a martyr in Karbala. You find others who may see Halaq and his spiritual position as a martyr. Every school in the religion of Islam looks at certain personalities who they revere as martyrs. Yet tonight I'd like to examine the very root of the meaning of martyrdom in Islam. Why? Because the word for martyr in the Arabic language is the word shaheed. But the word shaheed means witness. What does witnessing have anything to do with dying in the way of God? As in, how many times have you thought to yourself, whenever you've seen the word martyrs translated, it's always translated with the word shaheed. You find, for example, we call Aba Abdullah Sayyid al-Shuhada. But shaheed means witness. The question arose within academic circles, how is it that the word shaheed, which means witness, eventually develops into meaning someone who dies in the way of God? Let's examine this in a number of stages. Number one, what is the theological meaning of the word shaheed and why is it one of God's 99 names? Number two, what's the legal meaning of shaheed and how important is a witness in legal cases? Number three, what's the social meaning of the word shaheed and how did it develop into being somebody who dies in the way of God? And was this the original meaning or did it only develop in the Prophet's years in Medina? Number four, a martyr, his body is dead. So why does the Quran say do not count him as dead? And number five, who were those who were martyrs alongside Amir al-Mu'mineen, but who on a night like this were surrounding his body? Let's look at this examination and dissect the topic in depth. The first area of looking at the concept of the shaheed is theological. In which way? In that Ash-Shaheed is one of the 99 names of God. Someone poses a question. Why does God give us these 99 names? The reply is that these names are all attributes which help us understand the necessary existence. In which way? Today somebody may come to you and say to you, explain God to me. The God that you worship, what's the difference between him and the God that I worship? Automatically, the more names you've memorized of God, the more you are able to explain his existence. For example, if you know that one of God's names is Ghafoor, you will automatically explain to the person that my Lord is one who the doors of forgiveness he keeps open all the time. If I know one of my Lord's name is Ar-Rahman, I will explain to the person that my Lord is full of mercy. If I know that my Lord is Jawad, then I will tell the person that my Lord is a Lord of generosity. Many times when Muslims are asked about God, they don't know how to describe that very essence which they worship. And that's a major problem in Tabligh. Why? Because we don't live in a Muslim country. We live in a cosmopolitan environment. And when you live in a cosmopolitan environment, your answers have to be sharper than usual. You have to be able to look at different ways of showing God. When I memorize those names, Ar-Rahman, Al-Ghafoor, Al-Jawad, Al-Ghani, Al-Kabir, all these names you hear in the munajat, every single one of these names is highlighted to me a different attribute of God. When Amir al-Mu'mineen within the munajat says, Mawla ya Mawlai, Anta al-Mawla, that means God is my master. Anta al-Jawad, God is the generous. Anta al-Qawi, God is the strong. Anta al-Kabir, God is the great. He is highlighting to you that any of you who ever thought of me as being great, I'm simply a servant of that great one. And he explains to you how, by using each of the attributes. Therefore, the first level, the attributes allow us to explain God. On the second level, the attributes are assigned for us to do what? To be a manifestation of God's attributes on earth. Meaning what? If I know God is Jawad, shouldn't I be then Jawad to the people? How many of you have heard the hadith? Have the akhlaq of God's akhlaq. Meaning what? Meaning when you've known God's attributes, now use those attributes with the people who you live around. When I say Allah is generous, I should be generous to the people. When I say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful, I should be merciful to the people. When I say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as an example, it's forgiving. I should be forgiving to the people. When you look at those names, one of them is Ash-Shaheed. Does this mean that God dies as a witness? Does this mean God dies as a martyr? God, as we know, doesn't die. So therefore, what does it mean when we say God is Ash-Shaheed? It means that God is a witness to each and every act in the life of the human being. Meaning what? Understand the root term of witness. It means that God witnesses all our actions in public and in private. He knows all our thoughts internally and externally. And that there isn't a single thought or a single action which He is not shaheed to. Meaning what? There isn't a single movement we make in this world which God is not a witness to. Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad, has a beautiful line about why God is Ash-Shaheed. He says, don't be a friend of God in public and an enemy of God in private. What does he mean by this? He means that you're not going to win. You try and be a friend of God in public, reciting salah beautifully, saying salamu alaykum to everybody in a warm voice. You get home, you're like a microwave oven walking around the house, showing heat towards every family member. There's no point being a friend of God in public, but an enemy of His in private. Likewise, you have some people who may come on the nights of Qadr. Publicly they are reciting dua, publicly they are crying, yet they can't even have friendships with their own community members. What's the point of being God's friend in public when in private your heart is full of animosity? When we say Allah is Ash-Shaheed, it means He's the witness to every one of our thoughts, both in public and in private, externally and internally. When our fourth Imam was asked, is there a place where I can sin? He replied, sin in the place where Allah cannot see you. Meaning what? Meaning, is there a place where Allah cannot see us? No. Likewise, the Imam was saying that don't try and live lives where you think you're going to escape from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a shaheed. He is the witness to each and every one of the movements of the human being. And that's why when our eighth Imam was asked by Al-Ma'mun within the gathering, he was asked, when you say God is the all-seeing and the all-witnessing, what do you mean? He replied by saying that God can see the black ant on a black rock on a black night. Me and you, we can't even see a blank ant on a lovely light day. Whereas he says the Lord, who is the witness to the movement of all His creations, can see what? He can see the movements of a black ant on a black rock in a black night. A black ant, when it's crawling on a black rock, surely camouflage will take over. And then on top of that, a dark night. I cannot see the movements of that ant, but the Lord who creates the ant is a witness to each and every one of its movements. And that's why whenever you think of committing a sin, always remember that God's first name theologically is Ash-Shaheed. Why? You can scam me and I can scam you. You can deceive me and I can deceive you. But the more that you are signing, where you are deceiving the human being, there is a Lord who watches every signature. And He'll bring it forth to you on the day when it counts. Many have recited the story, which I'm sure you've heard, that there was a drought in Basra on one occasion. When there was this drought in Basra, this lady who used to look after her children, she found no way whatsoever to be able to feed them. So what did she do? She went round trying to look for someone to help her. When she went round looking for someone to help her, she met someone. He said to her, I don't mind helping you, but you have to satisfy my desires. She said to him, what do you mean I have to satisfy your desires? He said to her, well, your children are in need, and I'm in need. If you look after me, I'll look after you. She rejected. The next day she came, again he said the same thing, until it reached a stage where the children were to die. What she did, she went to him and she said, I'll satisfy your desires, but on one condition, that nobody sees us when we are performing the action. He said to her, no problem, I'll make sure we go to a place where nobody is able to see us. He took her towards an area in his courtyard where nobody was there. She came, he came. He said to her, now look after my desires. She replied, I would, but there's too many people here. He said, so what do you mean? Look Look around. He looks around, she looks around. He said, there's nobody here, it's just me and you. She said, no, there are too many people here. I said, take me to a place where nobody is a witness. He said, so what do you mean? She says, there are too many people here. The two angels on your shoulders, the two angels on my shoulders, and the Lord who created those angels. Wherever you go on this earth, the Lord is a witness to your action. Therefore, the question then arose, if Allah is a shaheed theologically, He is a witness, could He transfer this witnessing to a creation or no? What do I mean? Some people ask the question in theology that God witnesses everything. If God wants to, can He give certain creations of His the ability to witness the events of humanity unfolding? Of course He can. Because you've seen the verse in the Quran which says that the Prophet is a witness to all nations. When the Prophet is a witness to all nations, it means God has given him a gift that the nations that came before him and the nations that came after him, Allah has allowed the Prophet, peace be upon him, to be a witness on all those nations. That when you come on the Day of Judgment, you have to not only answer to Allah first, but you also answer to His Prophet about his actions. And that this idea of witnessing can even be transferred to a successor of a Prophet. How many of you have read the verse in Surah 13, verse 43? When Rasulullah was accused by the disbelievers of being a person whose message isn't the right message. It's a message of sorcery. What did Rasulullah say? قُلْ كَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكُمْ وَمَنْ عِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ الْكِتَابِ. Enough for me, even if you accuse me of not being a prophet, enough for me is that God is my witness and the one who has knowledge of the book. Now when you go into the books of Tafsir, you ask, who is the one who has knowledge of the book? Some of our brothers in other schools in Islam say, Abdullah ibn Salam. Say, what do you mean? Say, Abdullah ibn Salam, he is the one who has knowledge of the book. That he was a knowledgeable man from other schools, and therefore he is the one with the knowledge of the book. The problem is Abdullah ibn Salam converted after the opening of Mecca. These verses were revealed years before the opening of Mecca. Therefore the hadith was asked to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, when the verse in the Quran says, it is enough for me that God is a witness and the one with knowledge of the book. Who is the one with knowledge of the book? Rasulullah said, that is Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamu alayh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That Amir al-Mu'mineen on the Day of Judgment, like Rasulullah, is a witness over all nations and their actions. Therefore, the first meaning of the word shaheed is that God is a witness over our actions. The second meaning of the word shaheed, what is it? It's a legal meaning. Because it is derived from the word shaheed, the word shahid. Shahid means what? In Islamic law, we say that whenever there's an act performed, for the punishment to take place, there have to be witnesses. In Islamic law, therefore, the legal term shaheed meant witness. Theft, 2 witnesses. Murder, 2 witnesses. Adultery, 4 witnesses. Someone asks, okay, what if for adultery, there's 3 witnesses who say one thing, and there's one who says something else? The 3 have to be whipped. Why? Because those 3, they say one thing, one says something else. Those 3 could have caused the end of a life of a human being. And we take our witnessing seriously in the legal system. That when you are going to be a witness within this legal system, you have to be someone who is saying everything exactly the same time and reports it in the same place. In adultery, 4 witnesses means what? Means all 4 of them must report the act at the same time, at the same place, and in exactly the same details. If 3 reports one thing and 1 reports another, those 3 have to be whipped. Someone asked the question, how about in theft? If someone steals, you need 2 witnesses. What if there is only 1 witness? Can you still cut the fingers off? No, you can't. It's at the discretion of the judge of the Islamic State. Because when once a person had stolen, Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, I'm a witness, I'm a shaheed to this. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, is there anybody else? He said, no, there isn't. He said, then it's my discretion that the person is allowed off. He said to him, why? He said, because in the Islamic State, you need 2 witnesses for theft. If those 2 are not there, there's only 1, then it's the discretion of the judge to make a decision in this area. The point being that shaheed on the legal term meant what? It meant someone who's a witness to any case. How many of you have read the story in the Quran about Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam? When he was alone with Zulaykha in the room. And when she said to him, I'll give you whatever you want. And he tried to run away. As he's running away to the door, her husband walks in. When her husband walks in, he sees his wife one way and he sees the son-in-law the other. When he sees the wife one way and he sees the son-in-law the other, he's wondering who is right and who is wrong. The reply that came was what? The reply that came was that there was a witness. وَشَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا. That there was a witness for this case from her family. Some ahadith say that the witness for this case was who? Some say it was a 6-month-old baby who God allowed to speak. I personally go with Ayatollah Nasir Makan Shiraz's opinion on this. That number one, a 6-month-old baby is not going to give you as rational answer as the Quran has given. Because the answer that was given was, if you want to know who's running after who, if the shirt is ripped from behind, then she's running after him. If the shirt is ripped from the front, he's running after her. I don't know many 6-month-olds who speak with that rationality. So what's the narration? The narration is that there was a witness from her family who witnessed what happened, and he gave the logical deduction. In Islam, legally, a witness occupies a prominent position. When one witness gives a document, that's normally taken as witnessing. However, only one person in history, Rasulullah said, his witnessing is worth 2 in legal terms. Who was he? Khuzaymah bin Thabit al-Ansari. Why? Do you know this Khuzaymah, how great he is, that when Amir al-Mu'mineen finished the Battle of Siffin, he had a famous sermon in Nahj al-Balagha where he says, Ayna Ammar, Ayna ibn al-Tayyihan, Ayna dhil shahadatayn. Khuzaymah bin Thabit, Rasulullah gave him an honor he hasn't given to any witness in the past and never will give to a witness again. What was the honor? That his witnessing counts for 2. People ask why. Rasulullah is on his way back towards Medina. He sees this Arab, he wants to purchase his camel. When he wants to purchase the camel of this Arab, he tells him, shall I take it now? Shall we pay for it now or in Medina? The Arab said, Ya Rasulullah, it's all agreed, the deal's sealed. It's all done now. I'll meet you in Medina. When Rasulullah met the Arab in Medina, what happened? When he met him within Medina, he said to the Arab, excuse me, can I have my camel? We'll make the payment now. The Arab said, which camel? He said to him, the one we agreed on. He said, I can't remember ever agreeing with you on any deal. He said, remember we met and we discussed the issue and you said, meet me in Medina? He said, I'm sorry, I can't. It's gone. It's completely gone. Rasulullah, one of his companions was walking past. He said to him, excuse me, I promise you, and I'm the prophet of God and you know me, that I bought this camel and the person said, pay me in Medina, we'll exchange. But now this person is saying he can't remember anything. Please explain to him what the situation is. The reply that came was from that person is, how do I know that happened? Rasulullah looked at him and said, what do you mean? You're my companion. He said, yes, but I wasn't there to see what you did. And that's the problem. As in, everybody goes in the same heaven. The one who believes in him sincerely and the one who questions him. All in the same heaven. And then another of the companions, he came and he said, I didn't see you. Khuzaymah bin Thabit was walking past. When Khuzaymah was walking past, Rasulullah called him and said, Khuzaymah, you're a witness. I was a person who bought this. I'm telling you that I bought this. Khuzaymah said, Ya Rasulullah, of course I believe you. At that moment, the first people looked at him and said, how do you trust Muhammad that much? He said, I've sold my soul and I've sold my life and I've sold my blood to Muhammad. You think I'm going to doubt him about a camel? There's been so many things I believe in I can't even see in these 2 eyes. You think about the camel I'm going to disbelieve? When Rasulullah saw this, he said, this person should not be called the shaheed. He should be called in legal terms, dhul shahadatayn. That his witnessing is worth 2. When he witnesses in a case, you don't need anybody else. As soon as he witnesses, call him dhul shahadatayn. When Amir al-Mu'mineen in Siffin after Siffin said, where is dhul shahadatayn? Where are those people who used to live in sincerity and truthfulness, that legally they were the best of people? Ammar ibn al-Tayyihan, dhul shahadatayn. They are not with me anymore. Therefore you find legally the shaheed was a witness in legal cases. That's why in Islam, whether you are black or you are white, whether you are young or you are old, whether you are educated or you're not educated, you can still be a witness in a legal case. The irony on the incident of Fadak when Ayman, the lady who brought up Rasulullah, when she was told about being a witness, and one of the personalities in that incident states, she's a non-Arab. We don't take witnessing from non-Arabs. The irony. But that I will discuss on another night, inshallah. Therefore, on the second level, the shaheed was a witness. On the third level, the question arises, then how did a word like shaheed become on a social level someone who dies on the battlefield? As in, what does witnessing have anything to do with dying on the battlefield? You see, this has an important examination. Why? Because many people, they think about it, they say, look, I've heard the word shaheed, but the word shaheed means a witness. So how comes now when someone dies on a battle, or someone dies in a martyrdom operation, you call him a shaheed? I'll explain the reason now. Originally, the word shaheed had nothing to do with dying on the battlefield. Originally, the word shaheed had nothing to do with dying on the battlefield. And the best person who explains this is Jalaluddin al-Suyuti. Jalaluddin al-Suyuti has a book called Abwab al-Sa'ada fi Asbab al-Shahada. Abwab al-Sa'ada fi Asbab al-Shahada. He says logically, there is no way the word shaheed originally meant dying on the battlefield in Islam. Do you know why? He said, look at the Prophet Muhammad's life. It's the clearest proof that it no way meant that at the beginning. Our Holy Prophet, how many years was he in Mecca as a prophet? How many years? 13. And how many years in Medina? 10. When's the first battle in the religion of Islam? In Mecca or in Medina? In Medina, in the second year after Hijrah. The Prophet was how old at the time in the second year after Hijrah, in the first battle of Islam? 55. Logically, 40 plus 13 plus 2 is 55. If the first battle of Islam was 15 years into his prophethood, then how can he be talking about shaheed in the early days of Islam when there have been no deaths on battlefields? Therefore he says originally in Mecca, there is no way Rasulullah would be talking about dying on a battlefield because there have been no battles in Mecca. He says originally the word shaheed in Mecca had a much broader definition. Only when Rasulullah went into Medina, he made it as someone who dies on the battlefield. So then Suyuti goes further. Listen to his explanation. He says the reason the word shaheed was used originally and had nothing to do with dying on the battlefield was that the word shaheed originally meant the person who's a witness to the truth of the religion of Islam. That's it. Originally, a shaheed is someone who was a witness to the truth. Later on, it's someone who's a witness to the truth and he displays this witnessing on the battlefield. But in the first days of Islam, the shaheed was simply someone who witnesses the truth of the religion. And even when you read Suyuti's Abwab, there's something very interesting in it. He gives you some broad definition of shaheed which is very interesting. He says, for example, in the early days of Islam, the following, and quite humorous this is, the following were given as reasons for being a shaheed. Someone who dies in a state of love sickness dies as a shaheed. I think a few of us here look like we're going to die in that way. For example, someone who dies in a state of seasickness dies as a shaheed. On the third level, someone who dies by doing ghusl with snow dies as a shaheed. You're going to die anyway if you do ghusl with snow. On the fourth level, a woman who can resist jealousy, she will die as a shaheed. Don't think we're going to have many sisters who will die as shuhada. No offense to the sisters meant, of course. And so you find on the first area he said that the definition was very broad. But then he explains very clearly. He says, look, in the beginning the word shaheed was that anybody who died in Islam as a witness to the truth of God's word, Allah called him a shaheed. Because the root of shaheed is a witness. You die as a witness. He says, for example, the woman in the early days of Islam came to Rasulullah. They said, Ya Rasulullah, we're never going to be able to perform jihad on a battlefield. So therefore I'd like to ask you, Ya Rasulullah, how is it that I will pass away as a shaheed? Rasulullah replied by saying that anybody, any woman who dies while giving birth, dies as a martyr. In Islam, if a woman dies in pregnancy, or dies while giving birth, she dies as a shaheed automatically. Why? Because she was a witness to God's truth by serving God's religion in the way she lived her life. Therefore you find that in history, any woman who died while giving birth, or a woman who died while pregnant, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the early days of Islam, when there was still no battlefields, was saying that that's someone who's a shaheed. I remember when the Khawarij fought Amir al-Mu'mineen. After they fought him, they started going around looking for his supporters. One day they caught Abdullah ibn Khabbab. They put him to the side, him and his wife, and they caught one of the mushrikeen. When they caught the mushrik, they said to the mushrik, they didn't know it was a mushrik. They said to him, what's your faith? He said, I'm a mushrik. What do you mean? He said, I believe in more than one God. They said, okay, you're free to go. Someone looked at them and said, why? They said, the verse in the Quran, Surah 9, verse 6, وَإِنْ أَحَدٌ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ اسْتَجَارَكَ فَأَجِرْهُ حَتَّى يَسْمَعْ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ. If any of the mushriks ask you for help, help him until he hears the word of God. Abdullah ibn Khabbab, what's your belief? He said, I'm a follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They said, execute him. He said, the mushrik, you allowed him to leave. And I'm a follower of Ali ibn Abi Talib, you're executing me? They said, execute him. They killed him there and then they looked at his wife. They said to her, and you, what are you, pregnant lady? She said, I'm a follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and this child is dedicated to Allah and a witness to the truth of his Khalifa. Bring the lady. They killed her, and then they killed the fetus that was inside her, pulled it out and threw it in the river. You find that this lady, her jihad was her pregnancy. That's her jihad. She was a witness to the truth, not on a battlefield. She was simply a witness to the truth of the religion of Islam and the way she lived her life. She was automatically given the term as being a shaheed. That's number one. Number two, anyone who's a student of the religion of Islam, if they die as a student of the religion, they die as shuhada. Why? Because gaining knowledge is service to God. And service to God means you're a witness to the truth of the message of Islam. Today, if anybody you see studying, sitting under a mimbar, is studying. Going to hawza is studying. Studying a religion to serve Allah is studying and worship. Each of these areas, Rasulullah said, anybody who dies a student of the religion, they die as a shaheed. Why? Because they are a witness to the truth of the religion. Number three, anybody who treats his wife and his children with akhlaq, dies as a shaheed. In the early days in Mecca, notice how the definition has nothing to do with the battlefield. In the early days, the definition is very broad. As long as a person lives the righteous life, they die as a shaheed. So when did the idea come that a shaheed is someone who dies on the battlefield? After the Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Uhud was in the 3rd year after Hijrah. Many of the companions had already helped Rasulullah in the Battle of Badr. They all then went to join and help Rasulullah in the Battle of Uhud. As you know, Abu Sufyan wasn't at the Battle of Badr. He was only in the Battle of Uhud. Why was he not at Badr? Because he caused the rumor for Badr. He didn't attend. At Uhud, he had to be there. Do you know why? Because his wife Hind, her father Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, and her brothers were killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib at Badr. Because they were killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib, she said to her husband, that you were not present at Badr, and my father and my brothers were killed by the son of Abu Talib. Now you must be at Uhud, because at Uhud I'm going to find out if you're a man or no. So he led the army. Rasulullah took his soldiers. Please understand this point. When Rasulullah took his soldiers, some of these soldiers happened to die in the battle. Amongst them was someone by the name of Hanzala. Hanzala, the son of Abu Ammar, was married to Jamila, the daughter of Abdullah ibn Ubay. Abu Ammar and Abdullah ibn Ubay, look how in Islam you have the worst dads, you can have the best children. Abdullah ibn Ubay and Abu Ammar was a Christian. Abdullah ibn Ubay was a hypocrite. Yet their children were of the best of the followers of Rasulullah. Hanzala and Jamila, they had just got married. On the first day they got married, Rasulullah made an announcement, we're going on jihad. She got some witnesses to say that, have you seen us spend our first night together? The people said, yes, you got married tonight. And so she said to her husband, go ahead to the battlefield. In that battle, her husband nearly killed Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan, he managed to hit him off his horse. As he was about to strike him, someone came and killed. When her husband died in that battle, upon the return to Medina, Rasulullah told her that her husband, his body was washed by the angels. She asked Rasulullah a question. She said, Ya Rasulullah, my husband is dead. Is there any point to the actions that he's performed? The verse was revealed, which is the most famous verse of martyrdom in Islam. The one I referred to at the beginning of the lecture. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. Surah 3 verse 169. Do not count those who have died in the way of God as being dead. No, they are definitely alive. This verse marks a turning point. That originally, a student of the religion of Islam is a martyr. Someone who treats his wife well is a martyr. A lady who dies in pregnancy is a martyr. This verse marks the turning point to say what? To say now the highest level of being a witness to the truth is if you're willing to give your life away for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because there's many of us in this hall today. Tell us, will you be a student of Islam? I'll do it. Tell us, for example, will you treat your wife and kids well? I'll do it. Tell them, we've got a jihad battle. Are you interested? Don't call me, I'll call you. I love how many Muslims love talking about jihad. But the moment he thinks about it, when he's sitting at home quietly, he says, you must be joking. I'm going on that battlefield. I have such an attachment to this world that wallah, I sometimes wish dunya would stay forever. But you found that it took a higher step after Uhud. In which way? In that now Islam didn't just say that anybody who dies as a witness to the truth of the religion is a shaheed. No. Now the highest level is those who give their life away in the cause of Allah on the battlefield. That's why even Rasulullah did something very interesting after the Battle of Uhud. After the Battle of Uhud, Rasulullah asked the people, is there people who are crying for my uncle Hamza? They said to him, Ya Rasulullah, no there isn't. He said, why is there nobody crying for my uncle? He asked the Ansar woman, I want you all to start crying. It's as if Rasulullah was beginning to show that that shaheed who gives his life away on the battlefield, that's the highest and most honorable of death, that it's obligatory on the Muslim to shed tears about them whenever they hear their name. Because that person was a witness to the truth in the most difficult circumstances. That's why the next question arises. But the Quran says, do not say he's dead, he's alive. Hold on a minute. Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib died at Uhud. His body was chopped up into pieces by Hind. So why are you saying he's alive? He's definitely dead. His physical body is dead, but his spiritual side will remain alive forever. And his legacy as a human being lives on after him. Because in Islamic thought, the martyr, his body dies. As Imam himself mentioned on his way to Karbala, his beautiful lines, if bodies are meant to die and decay, then let this body be chopped into 1,000 pieces. What did he mean? He meant that this body, let it disintegrate in the ground. Is there going to be a legacy of me after I die? As in, will my message continue after I die? Yes. So when Allah said, don't count them as dead, they are alive, it meant that their bodies, yes, they are dead. Their souls, they are alive. Their legacy, it is alive. Their principles, they'll remain alive. And that's why the great scholars of the 20th century in the religion of Islam, when they look at the martyr, they define the martyr's logic as a unique logic. Why? Because the martyr reaches that level where they recognize that here, my body, it's dead. But the principles which I stood for, they'll remain alive. Look at four of the great scholars. Sayyid Muhammad Qutb, Ayatollah Mahmud Taliqani, Dr. Ali Shari'ati, and Shaheed Mutahari. All four of them look at martyrdom in a unique way. Sayyid Muhammad Qutb, they asked him, what is a martyr? He said, a martyr is someone who recognizes that God's law is more precious than his life. And he is willing to give away his life so that God's law surrounds the earth forever. Then you found Ayatollah Mahmud Taliqani. In his line, he said, do you know what a martyr is? A martyr is a human being. He used Rumi's couplet. He said, a martyr is a human being who moves from imperfection to perfection. Look at us. As bodies, aren't we imperfect? But the moment we give our life away for principles, we become perfect radiant beacons on the earth. Aba Abdullah, you look at that body on the 10th of Muharram, it's surrounded by arrows. Yet when 300 million remember him, isn't that man still alive? The body is gone. Mahmud Taliqani said, a martyr is one who moves from imperfection to perfection. Before, he's just body. Now, he's principles. And principles is perfection. Then you had Shaheed Mutahari said, the logic of a martyr is unique. He recognizes that he has to lose his life so that the light of the candle of humanity continues to shine forever. If I die, so what? Will humanity live? Yes. Then let my death be a death which is there. And that's why you find Dr. Ali Shari'ati has an unbelievable line which differs with the rest of them about the martyr. And I believe he was influenced in the Sorbonne through Napoleon's thinking and coming to this line. Dr. Ali Shari'ati, what does he say? He said, you want to know the greatness of the martyr? The greatness of the martyr isn't his death, it's his cause. Because there are many who go to battlefields and they die. But the cause of each one may be something different. Have any of you heard the story of Shaheed al-Himar? You've heard the story of Shaheed al-Himar. Himar means the donkey. Shaheed means what? Martyr. So if we say martyr of the donkey, what do we mean? Rasulullah has gone on an expedition with his companions. You'd think all of them are going for Islam. This one is because he lost his donkey. And he heard the donkey was in the other tribe. So everyone's going, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. They get there. When they get there, everybody wants to fight except this one is looking around. They say, what are you looking for? Is there someone who's oppressed you? No. What are you looking for? My donkey. I'm just trying to see which one it is on the other side. They called him Shaheed al-Himar. Why? He is the martyr who has no cause. He just dies. Whereas Shari'ati said, don't look at the death of the man. Look at the cause which he had. Then you'll know the greatness of the man. When Abu Abdullah came out on the 10th of Muharram and he said, إِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجُ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَطِرًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي رسول الله أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر وأسير بسيرة جدي وأبي أمير المؤمنين. He was saying, I've not come out to be a king. I've not come out to have vengeance. I've not come out to oppress. I've come out to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. Don't remember me in the 10th of Muharram for the way I died. Remember me for the cause I stood up for. And that's where many Muslims are missing the meaning of the martyr. Today, it's about the death more so. There's more concentration. How did he die? In which way did he fall? Did he have this? Look at the cause of the man. Then you'll know what a human being this man was walking on the earth. And that's why the discussion of martyrdom continued, that even Ghazali discussed the issue of, Abis, the companion of Abu Abdullah, the one who ran on the 10th of Muharram. He said, I am the lover of Hussein. He took his armor off. He ran right into the middle of the battlefield. Ghazali discussed, can a person in a battlefield, when he's a witness to God's truth on earth, can he run like that in the middle of a battlefield just saying, I'm a lover of Hussein? Because he discussed the issue of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari who did the same with the Romans. Ghazali said there are two conditions. If he does it, knowing it will bring fear in the opposition, then it's perfectly allowed. Because when Abis ran in the middle of the 10th of Muharram and he said, I am the lover of Hussein, the opposition were rattled. How does a man run out with that much love that he doesn't even have his armor on him? He said, if that is what happens, then that is a war tactic, there's no problem. But he said, if a person runs out and knows he's going to be executed, and it's not going to help his army, then he should stay away from such a thing. Therefore you found that the religion of Islam gave a unique philosophy to the martyr. That originally a martyr was a witness to the truth, but that later on it meant he witnesses the truth by giving his life away. And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen, when you look at his companions, there were certain companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib, hear these words carefully. There were certain companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the sword was placed on them to denounce their love for Ali ibn Abi Talib. Yet do you know why they became shuhada? Not because they were killed later on because of this, but because they were witnesses to the truth of the message of Islam through their allegiance to Amir al-Mu'mineen. These companions surrounded him on a night like this. Who are they? Ammar ibn Hamaq al-Khuza'i. Ammar ibn Hamaq al-Khuza'i was the first man in Islam whose head was paraded on a spear when Muawiyah killed him. And do you know why they killed him? Because he would stand up against those who would abuse Ali ibn Abi Talib on the Friday prayer. He would stand up. This is a shaheed. He hasn't died. Listen to his cause. That makes him a shaheed. He stood up and he says, I'm a witness to the truth of the message of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And although my master has died, I will look after his message. Because his body has died, but his principles are alive. And his principles will not go. How dare you abuse my master in front of me? Muawiyah ordered that they catch him, they beheaded him, they put his head on a spear and they paraded him. The first man in Islamic history whose head was paraded on spears was Ammar bin Hamaq al-Khuza'i, the companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen. The second companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, who stood up against those who spoke out against his master, Ammar, the servant of Amir al-Mu'mineen. The way Ammar stood up against Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi. A stand which I recommend each one of you to go and see. When Hajjaj comes to him and says to him, you are of the lovers of Abu Turab, he said, I'll never leave Abu Turab. And Abu Turab is still alive today. Abu Turab may have died in Najaf, but I am a representative of his message. He said, then I'll kill you if you love him. He said, kill me now if you want to, and I'll show you what I'll do to you on the day of judgment when it counts. He got Ammar and he executed him. Ammar, it wasn't his death that made him a shaheed. His cause meant he was already a shaheed. Already he was a witness to the truth. The third one, Maytham al-Tammar. Maytham al-Tammar used to go and feed the tree which he knew he's going to be crucified on every morning. Would you do that? The tree which Ali ibn Abi Talib told you you'll be crucified on, you'd go every morning and feed it. He'd give it water. And people would come and say to him, is it because you want to buy a house in this area? And he'd look at them and he'd wonder about the type of people who lived around him. And he'd come near the tree and he'd say, oh tree, I was created for you and you were created for me. When Ibn Ziyad caught him and he was about to kill him on the 22nd of Dhul Qa'dah, around the 60th year after Hijrah, a few weeks before Karbala happened, when Ibn Ziyad caught him, he said to him, I'm going to crucify you for your love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, do it. My master told me and 9 others will be crucified praising him. And Ibn Ziyad looked at him and he said, then I'm not going to kill you to prove your master wrong. He said, it doesn't matter. Put me wherever you want to put me. He placed him on the tree and every morning he'd recount, oh people, do you know Ali ibn Abi Talib? And do you know the merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen? And he would continuously recount them until Ibn Ziyad ordered that his tongue is pulled out of his mouth. And that they crucified him there on the spot. It wasn't his death that made him. Rather it was his cause. The fourth of them, Hujr bin Adi al-Kindi. Those of you who visit Sayyidah Zainab in Sham, make sure you visit Hujr bin Adi al-Kindi. Go to that man in Marj Adra, that man who even before he died, they said to him, why are you standing? They said to him, why are you standing? He said, I cannot leave Ali ibn Abi Talib. How dare you abuse my Imam? Just before he died, I want every father to hear this. Just before he died, they said to him, what's your final wish? He said, kill my son before you kill me. They said to him, why? He said, kill my son ahead of me. They came and beheaded his son ahead of him. They said to him, why did you want us to kill your son ahead of you? He said, I cannot. I cannot bear to think that my son may leave the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen outside. I cannot bear to think that my son would leave the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Each one of these on a night like this was standing outside the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib because they knew that the Imam, the poison had surrounded his head and had begun to spread to his body. Ibn Muljam narrates that my strike would have killed 1,000 men, but Ali ibn Abi Talib didn't kill him there and then. The fifth of the companions who was standing outside the house, Al-Asbagh ibn Nubasa. Al-Asbagh ibn Nubasa loved Ali ibn Abi Talib. Al-Asbagh ibn Nubasa was one of the few people when Abu Hurairah was against Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was one of the few people who went to him and said, "You are of those who showed love to the enemies of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and I will not stand for it." Al-Asbagh narrates, we were standing outside the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and we can hear the daughters of Ali ibn Abi Talib in the house crying. We can hear the daughters of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Those of you who've seen your father die, I'll leave this in your hands. Some of us had the chance to see our father when he died. Others of us didn't know. We only got a phone call. But those of you who've been near your father will know how difficult it is, especially if your father is ill and you have to see your father going through those final moments. He said we can hear the daughters of Ali ibn Abi Talib in the house, and they were crying one after the other. And then we began to cry. When we began to cry, we entered near Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Amir al-Mu'mineen was lying. Amir al-Mu'mineen was lying on his bed. When we sat near him, we began to cry like we've never ever cried in our lives. Imam al-Hassan narrates that my father said, "Oh my son Hassan, tell them that they are allowed to leave the house now." Imam al-Hassan narrates that they left one by one, except Al-Asbagh ibn Nubasa. He stayed sitting near the door of the house. He said, I came towards Al-Asbagh and I said to him, "Asbagh, why is it that you cry? Why do you not leave?" He said, "I cannot separate from Ali ibn Abi Talib." Imam al-Hassan returned back to his father and he said to him, "Oh my father, Al-Asbagh says he can't leave you." He said, "Call him here, let him come next to me." When Al-Asbagh ibn Nubasa came near Amir al-Mu'mineen, Amir al-Mu'mineen looked at him and he said, "Oh my dear Asbagh, do not cry. I can see Jannah coming towards me." He said to him, "Oh my master Amir al-Mu'mineen, I do not cry because of you going towards Jannah. Rather I cry because what does the world mean to me after Ali ibn Abi Talib is left? I cannot imagine a day where I can live without Ali ibn Abi Talib being alongside me. I cannot separate from Amir al-Mu'mineen for a day in my life." The doctor who walked in was called Al-Athir ibn Ammar al-Sakuni. When Al-Athir walked in, he came near the head of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He took out a hot piece. He placed that hot piece on the head where the bandage was placed. That head, it had been struck in the battle of Khandaq. Ibn Muljam struck Amir al-Mu'mineen in the same place. Asbagh narrates, I don't know which one was more yellow, the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen or the bandage that covered the head. He narrates that in that moment, the doctor turned around to Imam al-Hassan and to Sayyida Zainab and to Kulthum and to Abu Abdullah. He called them all in. He said to them, "Your father Ali ibn Abi Talib has to write his will." And they said to him, "Why?" He said, "I could see the flesh of the brain of Amir al-Mu'mineen." We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Raise your hands. Raise your hands. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Amir al-Mu'mineen, to allow us to be amongst those who die as witnesses to the truth of the religion of Islam. Ya Allah, allow us to receive the intercession of the martyrs on the day of judgment. Allow us to be amongst those who follow the message of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Raise us alongside the Imam and allow us to be amongst those who are victors alongside him. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it the loudest of salawat.